The shy rancher's life changes forever when an Apache woman rides into his world. The ranch stretched wide under the early morning sky, a golden expanse of fields, fences, and grazing cattle. The sun was just beginning to climb, casting a warm glow over the land, and the gentle wind carried the faint scent of hay and earth. On this quiet morning, the rancher rode slowly along a narrow trail between two large pastures. His horse was calm, accustomed to the slow rhythm of his rider's movements. He had named the horse Dusty years ago, and they shared a silent understanding. Dusty responded to the smallest shift of weight, the faintest tug of the reins. Together, they moved like a single being, part of the land they both loved. The rancher was a man of few words, though he was not unfriendly. Most people in the nearby town knew him by sight, but rarely spoke to him. He preferred it that way. Life on the ranch was simple and steady, and he liked it that way too. Each morning followed a routine: check the fences, feed the animals, repair anything that needed fixing, and ride the land to make sure everything was in order. The days were long and sometimes lonely, but they were satisfying. He took pride in the work he did and the life he built with his own hands. As he rode, he noticed small signs of the season changing. The grass near the creek was greener than before, the wildflowers were beginning to bloom, and the sky seemed clearer, brighter. It was easy to forget the world outside the ranch when surrounded by so much beauty. The quiet of the fields and the soft sounds of nature made him feel at peace, even in the moments when the chores were tiring or the weather harsh. He often thought about how different his life was from that of the people in town. While others were busy with stores, offices, and machines, he found joy in simpler things. A well-built fence, a healthy cow, the sound of the creek running over rocks, or the soft nuzzle of a horse's nose. These were the things that mattered to him. Yet there were times when the quiet became too much. Sometimes, as he ate alone in the small kitchen of his ranch house or fixed a broken fence post, he felt a small pang of loneliness. He had never married, never had children, and most days the only voices he heard were the animals on the ranch. The rancher's house was modest but sturdy, built by his father many years ago. He kept it tidy, though it never felt empty. Tools, boots, and worn hats filled the shelves. There were photographs of his family faded and framed on the walls. His parents had passed on long ago, leaving him the ranch and the land he loved. He often wondered if he would ever find someone to share it with. Most of the time he thought not. He had grown used to being alone, and he didn't know how to change that. One morning, after feeding the cattle and checking the fences, he rode toward a trail along the edge of the canyon. The trail was narrow, with wild grass brushing against his legs and the sides of Dusty. As he moved along the path, he noticed a group of riders in the distance. They were far enough away that he couldn't see them clearly, but he could make out the shapes of horses and people. His curiosity piqued. He slowed Dusty down and squinted to see better. There was something unusual about the riders, something that made his heart beat a little faster. He had not seen many travelers on this trail in years. Most people stayed on the main roads or passed through the town. Seeing riders out here was rare, and it always made him pause. He wondered who they were, where they were going, and why they were so far from the town. He had learned long ago to observe quietly and not assume anything. Life on the ranch taught patience and careful attention. Every day was full of small lessons, and he had learned to notice things others might miss. As he watched, one rider separated slightly from the group. She moved with confidence, her horse steady and strong. Something about the way she rode caught his eye. She was skilled, careful, and yet free in her movements. He felt an unfamiliar pull in his chest, a curiosity mixed with admiration. He didn't know why he felt this way. It was unusual for him to notice strangers, let alone feel a quiet excitement at their presence. Yet there was something about her that made him feel alive in a way he hadn't felt in years. The rancher turned Dusty slowly, keeping his eyes on the rider as she moved along the trail. He felt a strange sense of anticipation, a feeling that something in his quiet life was about to change. He tried to push the thought aside. He was cautious, careful by nature. Life on the ranch taught him that rushing or assuming could lead to mistakes. Yet the curiosity stayed. The woman seemed different, not like the visitors or townspeople he had encountered before. She carried herself with a quiet strength, and it intrigued him. After a while, he decided to continue his ride along the canyon, giving the riders space. Yet he couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter was the start of something new. He thought about the trail, the sun, and the way the wind carried the scent of the land. Everything felt sharper, brighter, more alive. Even Dusty seemed alert, as if sensing the change in the air. The rancher felt a mix of excitement and nervousness, emotions he rarely experienced. He had lived most of his life in routine, but now the routine felt different, like it was on the edge of being broken in the best possible way. Back at the ranch house, he went about his chores, feeding the animals and checking supplies, yet his mind wandered back to the rider. He remembered her posture, the way she guided her horse, and the confidence in her movements. For the first time in a long while, he thought about someone outside his familiar world, not just as a visitor, but as a person who could enter his life and make a difference. He felt an unexpected warmth in his chest, a feeling of hope he hadn't felt in years. That evening, as he sat on the porch watching the sun dip below the horizon, the rancher reflected on the day. The sky turned shades of orange and pink, and the land seemed to glow under the fading light. He sipped his coffee slowly, letting the quiet of the evening settle around him. Yet, in that quiet, he felt a small spark of anticipation. He didn't know what would happen next, but he sensed that his life, as steady and predictable as it had been, might be on the verge of change. The rancher's life had always been simple, built on hard work, patience, and respect for the land. He had thought he would always live this way, surrounded by fields and animals, alone with his thoughts. But the sight of the rider on that morning trail had stirred something inside him. Something he could not name. Something that made his heart beat faster and his mind imagine possibilities he had never considered. He felt both nervous and excited, emotions that reminded him that life was not only about routine but also about moments that could change everything. As the stars began to appear in the sky, he went inside the ranch house. The lamps cast a soft glow on the wooden floors and walls. He looked out the window toward the trail along the canyon, half expecting to see the rider again. But there was nothing there, only the quiet night and the gentle rustle of the wind through the trees. Still, he felt a sense of anticipation, a feeling that this encounter was only the beginning. His life, once quiet and predictable, seemed ready to open up to something new, something he had not dared to imagine before. He went to bed that night thinking about the trail, the riders, and the confident woman who had passed through his world. Sleep came slowly as his mind replayed every detail. The sound of hooves, the sway of the horses, the movement of her hands as she guided her horse. He realized that his life, though comfortable and steady, had been waiting for a moment like this, a moment when something unexpected could bring change, excitement, and a chance for connection he had never known. And so, the shy rancher's days continued, still filled with the familiar chores and quiet routines of ranch life. Yet, in the quiet of his heart, a new feeling had taken root, a feeling of curiosity, hope, and the possibility that life could be more than work and solitude. He could not know what the future held, but he sensed that the encounter with the rider was only the first step toward a journey that would change his life forever. The following week, the quiet rhythm of the rancher's life was interrupted in a way he could never have predicted. The morning air was crisp and cool, carrying the scent of earth and grass, when he noticed movement along the edge of his property. From a distance, he saw a lone rider approaching. Unlike the groups of riders he occasionally saw passing through town, this rider moved with purpose, confidently guiding a strong dark horse along the trail near his fences. As the rider came closer, he could see her more clearly. She was a woman, tall and poised, with an air of quiet strength. Her long hair was pulled back neatly, and she wore clothes that were practical for riding, yet hinted at her individuality. She handled her horse with skill and ease, as though the animal were an extension of herself. The rancher, who was usually careful not to stare, found himself watching. There was something about her presence that made the air feel different, as if the morning sun shone brighter just for her. The woman guided her horse right up to the gate that separated the trail from the ranch. The rancher, realizing she was near, walked slowly toward her, his boots crunching softly against the gravel. He stopped a few feet away, giving her space. "Good morning," he said, his voice steady but calm, as though he spoke the same words every day to strangers. "Good morning," she replied, her voice warm and confident. There was no hesitation in her tone, no awkwardness. She looked directly at him, and the rancher felt a momentary hesitation in his chest, a flutter he could not explain. He nodded politely, unsure whether to step forward or wait. Her horse shifted its weight slightly, and she adjusted the reins with a practiced hand. "I hope I'm not intruding," she said. "I was following the trail and ended up here. I don't usually ride this far, but I wanted to explore." Her words were careful, respectful, and yet they carried a quiet sense of independence. She did not ask for permission, but she did not assume anything either. The rancher studied her for a moment, considering his next words. He had lived most of his life in solitude, and encounters like this were rare. "You're welcome to pass through," he said finally. "The trail leads beyond my fences, but I like to know who's coming near the ranch." His tone was neutral, but there was a subtle warmth in his eyes. She smiled faintly, acknowledging his caution. It's good to respect the land. I appreciate that. Her respect for his space and property stirred something in him. He realized how uncommon it was to meet someone who not only understood boundaries, but also valued them. He felt a quiet admiration growing inside him. The woman guided her horse closer to the fence, and he noticed the way she handled the reins with gentle confidence. He was fascinated by her skill and ease. She seemed completely at home on horseback, moving in harmony with her animal as if they were one being. The rancher himself had a deep connection with horses, and he recognized her expertise immediately. There was an unspoken understanding between them, a recognition of shared knowledge and respect for the animals they both loved. I'm curious, she said after a moment of silence. How long have you lived here? Her question was simple, yet it carried a tone of genuine interest. It was the kind of question that could lead to conversation, but it was not intrusive. Most of my life, he replied, keeping his voice calm. I inherited this place from my parents. I take care of the land, the animals. It keeps me busy. He didn't offer more than necessary, yet he felt an unusual desire to share. Something about her presence made him want to speak, to explain his life and the quiet joys it held. She nodded thoughtfully. It must be rewarding, she said. To work with your hands, to care for the land and the animals. Not many people have that kind of life anymore. Her words struck a chord. She saw value in his work, in his world, a recognition he rarely received from strangers. He felt a warmth spreading in his chest, a subtle but undeniable connection forming between them. The woman glanced toward the horses grazing nearby, then back at him. I've always loved horses, she said. I grew up riding them. They teach you patience, trust, and responsibility. It's something I've always carried with me. Her words resonated with the rancher. He understood exactly what she meant, the silent language between rider and horse, the mutual trust and understanding required to move together safely. I know what you mean, he said softly. A horse isn't just an animal to me. It's company, a partner. The words sounded strange even to him, but he could feel the honesty behind it. She nodded as though she understood more than his words could explain. For a while they stood in silence, simply observing each other and the surroundings. The morning sun glinted off the horse's mane, and the breeze rustled through the trees. The rancher felt a sense of calm he hadn't experienced in years, as if the world had slowed down just for this moment. There was a gentle connection forming, built on mutual respect and understanding, without the need for unnecessary words. Then, without warning, the woman's horse shied slightly at a sudden noise, a branch snapping nearby. She adjusted her reins quickly, steadying the animal. The rancher instinctively stepped forward to help, his movements careful but assured. Are you okay? He asked. Yes, she said, though her voice carried a note of relief. Thank you. Sometimes the animals get startled. It's part of riding. Her calm composure impressed him. She didn't panic. She adapted. The rancher admired that strength, and for a moment he felt a strange sense of protectiveness, not because he thought she needed saving, but because he respected her so much. After a few moments she relaxed, and they both laughed softly at the tension that had passed. The sound was light and easy, and it lingered between them like a bridge connecting their separate worlds. He realized then that he was enjoying her company more than he had expected. There was something refreshing about her presence, a sense of vitality and curiosity that stirred something inside him. I should keep moving, she said finally. I don't want to overstay. Her tone was polite, but he noticed a hint of reluctance in her voice, as though she too felt the pull of this unexpected encounter. You're welcome here any time, he said before he could stop himself. The words surprised him, even as he spoke them. They were honest, and he meant every one. He had never invited anyone onto his land like that, at least not in years. She looked at him for a moment, a faint smile forming, and nodded. Thank you, she said warmly. I may take you up on that sometime. With that, she guided her horse back to the trail, moving with the same confident grace she had displayed from the start. The rancher watched her leave, a strange emptiness settling where her presence had been, replaced by anticipation and curiosity. He wondered when, or if, he would see her again. That evening he thought about the encounter repeatedly. Each detail came back to him. The way she held herself, the calm in her voice, the effortless connection she had with her horse. He felt a flicker of excitement in his chest, a small spark of something new entering his quiet world. For the first time in years, he considered that life might hold more than routine, work, and solitude. Over the next few days, he found himself scanning the trails more often, hoping for another glimpse of her. He tried to focus on his work, tending to the fences and feeding the animals, but his thoughts kept returning to her. There was a quiet longing he had never known before, a desire to see her again and learn more about her life, her experiences, and the confidence she carried so effortlessly. The rancher also noticed subtle changes in himself. He spoke to his animals with more cheer, whistled softly while working, and even took extra care in preparing his meals, as if she might appear at any moment. He was usually content with simplicity, but now he was aware of the possibility of connection, companionship, and shared moments. The thought of her had awakened something inside him that had been dormant for years. Then, one afternoon, as he was repairing a broken fence post near the edge of the property, he saw her again. She was riding along the same trail, this time closer to the ranch house. She waved lightly when she noticed him, and he waved back, a smile spreading across his face. Dusty neighed softly, sensing his rider's excitement. The rancher's heart lifted as he realized that their paths were crossing again, as though fate had intervened to bring this woman into his world. This time she dismounted when she reached the edge of the ranch, tying her horse carefully to a post. "I hope I'm not intruding again," she said, stepping closer. Her eyes were warm, and there was a hint of curiosity and playfulness in her expression. "You're welcome," he said, feeling more confident than before. "It's nice to have company." The words sounded strange even to him, but they were honest. For the first time in a long while, he felt an ease in talking to someone new, someone who could understand the world he inhabited. They spent the afternoon together, walking along the trail, discussing the land, the horses, and the simple pleasures of ranch life. She asked questions about his daily routines, the animals, and the challenges he faced, listening with genuine interest. The rancher found himself explaining things he had never spoken of to anyone outside his family, sharing stories and small moments from his life. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with shades of pink and orange, he realized how much he had enjoyed the day. Her presence had brought a new energy into his world, a feeling of excitement and anticipation he had long forgotten. He had thought his life was complete in its simplicity, but now he understood that there was room for connection, friendship, and perhaps even something more. Days turned into weeks, and the shy rancher's life began to change in ways he had never expected. The Apache woman continued to visit the trail near his ranch, sometimes stopping to speak, sometimes simply riding past with a quiet wave. Each encounter, no matter how brief, left a mark on him. The routine of ranch life remained the same, feeding the animals, checking fences, and repairing equipment. But now there was a new rhythm, one marked by anticipation and the hope of seeing her again. He found himself preparing more carefully for her visits. Sometimes he would take an extra moment to groom Dusty, brushing the horse until its coat shone in the sunlight. Other times he would make sure that the yard was tidy, the fences secure, and the animals calm. It was a small effort, but it made him feel ready, as though her visits were not just unexpected moments, but opportunities for connection. The Apache woman seemed to notice these small changes. One afternoon she laughed softly when she saw how carefully he was grooming Dusty. "You take good care of your horse," she said warmly. "It shows how much you value him." Her words were simple, but they carried admiration and respect. The rancher felt a rush of pride. Few people ever noticed the quiet effort he put into caring for the animals. Yet she did. Their conversations grew longer with each meeting. At first they spoke of simple things, the weather, the condition of the horses, or the state of the trails. But gradually, the topics deepened. She shared stories of her childhood, growing up in a close-knit Apache community, learning traditions, survival skills, and the importance of respect for nature. He listened intently, fascinated by the world she described, a world so different from his own but connected by shared values, hard work, patience, and respect for the land. In turn, he began to share pieces of his own life. He told her about his parents and how they had taught him the ways of the ranch, the lessons they had passed down, and the quiet joys of tending to the animals. He spoke of the solitude he had grown used to, the sense of peace it brought, but also the loneliness that sometimes lingered in the evenings. She listened without judgment, offering thoughtful questions and gentle encouragement. For the first time, he felt that someone truly understood, not just his work, but the man behind it. The rancher began to notice more about her as well. He observed the careful way she moved, the attention she gave to every horse, and the respect she showed for the land. He admired her independence, the confidence she carried without arrogance, and the quiet strength that seemed to radiate from her. There were moments when she would laugh freely, a sound that filled the space around them with warmth and light. It was a sound he looked forward to, a rare pleasure that brought unexpected joy to his days. One day, as they walked along the trail together, she paused to examine a small stream running through the canyon. "Water is life," she said softly, kneeling to touch the clear, cool current. "It sustains everything, and we must treat it with care." The rancher watched her, amazed at the way she saw the world, not just as it appeared, but as it connected everything around her. Her perspective challenged him to think differently, to notice the small wonders he had taken for granted in his routine life. Their bond grew not only through conversation, but through shared labor. On several occasions, she helped him with the ranch chores, moving feed, repairing fences, or checking on the animals. Though he was hesitant at first, worried that he might offend her by suggesting work, she insisted, her hands steady and capable. Together they worked in silence at times, communicating through gestures and glances rather than words. These moments created a quiet intimacy, a sense of partnership that neither of them had expected, but both deeply valued. As their friendship developed, small moments of tension and misunderstanding naturally arose. One afternoon, a sudden storm swept through the area while she was visiting. Rain fell in sheets and the wind shook the trees. The rancher moved quickly to bring the horses to shelter, and she followed, guiding her own horse with care. In the chaos, a misunderstanding occurred. He thought she was in danger while she felt he was overprotective. For a brief moment, the tension between them was palpable. But as soon as the rain eased, they laughed at the misunderstanding. The rancher apologized, explaining his concern, and she acknowledged that she appreciated it, even if it had startled her at first. The storm became a story they would recall with humor in the future, a memory of how they navigated challenges together. This incident deepened their connection, showing that even moments of friction could strengthen their bond when met with understanding and respect. The Apache woman also introduced the rancher to aspects of her culture that fascinated him. She showed him how to identify edible plants along the trail, shared stories of her ancestors, and explained customs and traditions that had been passed down for generations. He listened carefully, absorbing the knowledge with genuine interest. In learning about her world, he began to see life differently, appreciating the depth and richness of culture, heritage, and the natural world around him. At the same time, he noticed subtle changes in himself. He became more open in conversation, more willing to share his thoughts and feelings. He laughed more easily, smiled more often, and even began to anticipate joy in ways he had not experienced before. Her presence had stirred a confidence within him, not loud or flashy, but steady and reassuring. He felt capable of more than just survival and routine. He felt capable of connection, trust, and emotional growth. The bond they shared was not just emotional, but practical. Together they faced small challenges around the ranch, a stubborn fence post that needed fixing, a calf that had wandered off, or a sudden illness among the livestock. They problem-solved side by side, each respecting the other's skills and instincts. These shared tasks created a rhythm, a sense of teamwork that strengthened their trust. It was during these moments that the rancher realized the depth of their compatibility. They complemented each other, each filling in the gaps the other could not reach alone. One evening, as the sun dipped low over the horizon, casting long shadows across the fields, they sat on a fallen log near the creek. The air was warm from the day, but carried the crisp promise of evening. They spoke of dreams, small ones, simple hopes for the future, like a well-tended garden, a healthy herd, or the satisfaction of mastering a difficult task. In this moment, the rancher felt a rare sense of vulnerability. He admitted, softly, that he had never imagined sharing his life with anyone. Yet, sitting beside her, he realized he wanted to, if only she would accept him as he was. She looked at him, her eyes reflecting the soft glow of the setting sun. "Life is unpredictable," she said gently. "We never know when someone will enter our world and change it, but it's up to us to recognize the gift when it comes." Her words resonated deeply with him. He realized that her presence in his life was indeed a gift, one he had not expected but now could not imagine living without. As the weeks passed, the local community began to notice the subtle changes in the rancher. Neighbors remarked that he seemed more confident, more present in conversation, and even happier. The Apache woman's influence had seeped into his life, not through grand gestures, but through small, meaningful interactions that reshaped his world, quietly but profoundly. There were moments of humor as well. One afternoon, while repairing a section of fence together, the rancher accidentally stepped into a muddy patch, slipping and almost falling. She laughed, a sound full of warmth and light, offering her hand to steady him. He couldn't help but smile, realizing that these simple, unplanned moments were some of the most memorable. Life, he understood now, was not only about work and routine, but also about joy, shared laughter, and human connection. They also shared silence comfortably. Sometimes they simply walked the trails, letting the horses move at their own pace, watching the sky, listening to the wind, and observing the world around them. In those moments, words were unnecessary. They communicated through glances, gestures, and the shared understanding of people who respected the land and each other. These silences became as meaningful as their conversations, forming a foundation of trust and companionship that would endure challenges ahead. One day, a small emergency tested the strength of their partnership. A calf had wandered too close to a steep embankment, and the rancher could not reach it safely alone. She stepped forward without hesitation, guiding the animal back with skill and calm. Together, they saved the calf from potential harm. That incident, though small, cemented a deeper bond. The rancher realized that he could rely on her judgment, her strength, and her presence in ways he had never experienced with anyone before. By the end of Part 3, their connection had grown into something profound, though still unspoken. They shared laughter, work, and the quiet moments of daily life, building trust and admiration. Each day brought them closer together, revealing layers of personality, skill, and compassion. The rancher, once shy and solitary, found himself opening to the possibility of friendship, partnership, and perhaps even love. The Apache woman had entered his world, not with grand gestures, but with quiet strength, understanding, and respect, leaving him forever changed. By the time the seasons began to change again, the shy rancher could clearly see how much his life had shifted. What once felt like endless quiet days, filled only with chores, had now gained new meaning. The Apache woman had become a regular part of his world. Her visits were no longer rare surprises, but something both of them quietly expected. And yet, every time she arrived, he still felt that small spark of excitement in his chest. The land itself seemed to reflect the change. The fields looked greener, the horses calmer, and even the long workdays felt lighter. It wasn't that the work had become easier. Ranch life never truly became easy. Fences still broke, animals still needed constant care, and weather still brought unexpected challenges. But he no longer carried the weight alone. Knowing she might ride in at any time gave him strength he hadn't realized he needed. Their friendship had grown steadily over the months. They trusted each other deeply now. Conversations flowed naturally, without the awkward pauses that had once marked their early meetings. He had learned to speak more openly, and she had come to appreciate his quiet honesty. They shared not only work, but also thoughts, memories, and dreams for the future. One evening, while repairing a section of fence near the canyon, they paused to watch the sunset. The sky was painted with soft orange and purple colors, and the wind carried the peaceful sounds of the land settling for the night. Moments like this had become common for them, simple, quiet, but deeply meaningful. "I used to think this place was complete," the rancher said softly. "I thought I had everything I needed, the land, the animals, the routine. But now I see something was missing." She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked across the fields thoughtfully. "Sometimes we don't know what we're missing until life shows it to us," she replied gently. He nodded. That was exactly how he felt. Her presence had filled a space he hadn't even known existed. As time went on, their partnership began to influence the wider community as well. Neighbors noticed how often she visited and how naturally she fit into ranch life. At first, some people were curious. A few were cautious simply because they didn't know her background. But her calm confidence, respect for others, and willingness to help gradually won everyone over. She attended local gatherings with him sometimes, small events where ranchers shared food, stories, and advice. At first he had worried she might feel uncomfortable there. Instead, she blended in easily, speaking warmly with people, listening more than she spoke, and showing genuine interest in their lives. The rancher felt proud walking beside her, not because she needed his support, but because their partnership had become something solid and balanced. Their work together on the ranch grew more organized, too. She had ideas about improving water flow to the pastures, rotating grazing areas, and caring for the horses in ways that combined traditional knowledge with practical ranch experience. He respected her insight. Together, they made small changes that slowly improved the land and animals. The rancher began to realize that partnership wasn't just emotional, it was practical. Two people working together thoughtfully could achieve more than one person alone. And more importantly, the work felt lighter when shared. Of course, not every day was perfect. There were still disagreements. Once, they spent an entire afternoon debating how to repair a damaged barn door. Both had strong opinions. Voices never rose in anger, but tension was clear. Eventually, they stepped back, laughed at themselves, and found a compromise. Moments like that taught them patience and respect. They learned that differences didn't weaken their bond. They strengthened it when handled with care. Another important shift happened inside the rancher himself. The shyness that had once defined him didn't disappear completely, but it softened. He became more comfortable speaking to neighbors, asking for help when needed, and even offering support to others. People began to see him not just as the quiet rancher who kept to himself, but as someone dependable and warm. He knew much of that change came from her influence. She never pushed him forcefully. She simply believed in him, treated him as capable, and encouraged small steps forward. That quiet encouragement changed how he saw himself. As the year moved toward cooler weather, the ranch faced one of its tougher seasons. A long dry spell made water management difficult. Grass grew slowly, and the animals required careful monitoring. It was the kind of challenge that once would have weighed heavily on him, but now they faced it together. They planned carefully, worked longer hours when needed, and supported each other through the stress. She brought not just practical help, but also emotional steadiness. When he felt discouraged, she reminded him of past successes. When she felt tired, he made sure she rested. Their teamwork turned a difficult period into a manageable one. By the end of that season, the ranch had not only survived, but remained strong. That success deepened their confidence in each other. It proved that their connection was not temporary or fragile. It was built on shared effort, trust, and mutual respect. One quiet morning, months after their first meeting, they rode side by side along the canyon trail where everything had begun. The air was cool, the sky clear, and the land stretched wide before them. Neither spoke for a while. Words weren't always necessary between them anymore. Finally, he said, "Meeting you changed my life. I didn't expect it. I didn't plan it, but I'm grateful every day." She smiled, her expression warm and thoughtful. "You changed mine too," she said simply. There was no dramatic declaration, no grand moment, just honesty. And somehow, that simplicity made it more meaningful. From that day forward, their partnership became a natural, accepted part of life. They continued working the ranch together, supporting each other, and building a future that balanced independence with companionship. Neither lost their identity. Instead, they grew stronger together. The ranch itself seemed to thrive under their combined care. Horses were healthier, pastures better managed, and even the old house felt more alive with two people sharing it. Laughter became common there, replacing the long silences that once filled its rooms. The rancher often thought about how unexpected it all had been. He had lived most of his life assuming things would stay the same. Yet one rider on a distant trail had changed everything, not through force or drama, but through steady presence, kindness, and shared effort. As the years continued, their story became one neighbors spoke of warmly. It wasn't a story of sudden romance or dramatic events. It was a story of respect, patience, and quiet transformation. Two very different lives had crossed paths and found harmony. And for the shy rancher, the greatest change wasn't just having someone beside him. It was the realization that opening his world had brought not loss, but growth. He was still himself, still connected to the land, still quiet by nature, but now his life held deeper meaning. One evening, as another sunset spread across the wide sky, they rode together across the fields. The horses moved calmly, the air peaceful, and the future felt steady. He glanced at her, grateful for the journey that had begun with a simple encounter. His world had once been silent and predictable. Now it was richer, warmer, and filled with shared purpose, and though life would always bring challenges, he knew they would face them together. For the shy rancher, the Apache woman hadn't just ridden into his world. She had helped him see that life, when shared with respect and understanding, could become far more beautiful than he had ever imagined, and that quiet truth stayed with him every day after.